Hello folks, welcome to the Mad Hatter tutorial video on how I painted the Mad Hatter illustration. Right here I'm just diving into penciling. This is sped up, so apologies if it's going a bit fast, but here, like at the beginning when I'm creating something, I usually sketch quite a few ideas. In this case I sketched about 3 or 4 because I kind of knew in my head already really what I was going for. I did want a front on kind of shot of Mad Hatter, and I did want him to be colourful and sort of crazy looking, as that's what he looks like, you know. And so what I usually do is at the start I have a grey. I usually start with a grey kind of canvas, and then I start drawing with a dark grey, so light grey canvas with a dark grey pencil. And like I said, I just sketch different ideas, and usually it takes a lot more than this. I think what made it easier in doing this is because you already kind of know. I mean, is my version of the Mad Hatter, but you already have your design worked out for you. You know, you already know that there's major things with the Mad Hatter. You know, he's got the hat, he's got the 10-6, the little note on his hat, he's got the big bow tie, he has crazy hair, and and he looks kind of oldish. And so, like, when you're designing, when you've got like a really clear brief like that and you can't change things, I mean, you can change a lot. I could have changed the hat and made it like a very weird design, but people know him, like, he's known to have a top hat because back then in England, like back then people would line their top hats with mercury, and that's what drove them crazy. So you really can't change the hat design too much, apart from maybe adding more to it. Like in the recent Disney movie, of the Mad Hatter, he kind of has a very weird hat design. Like, it's the same hat, but it's got all messy and all kind of not broken, but just it's got all little attachments on it and stuff like that. So here I'm just sketching, I think, a third drawing. There's quite a few drawings in this, so as you can see, I'm just lucky I did speed it up because there's quite a few options. And so I was like playing on I was looking at, when I was drawing and designing my Mad Hatter, I was kind of like looking at going back to the original design and look, okay, well, he had buck teeth and his hat was quite large, and he did have that crazy hair, and the bow tie is rather large, compared to his face. So I really wanted to make sure that when I designed my version, I still kept to the essence of the original, the Alice in Wonderland Mad Hatter, the original writings. And I was looking at the original illustrations as well, because the first drawings that I've got up here, they were the original drawings in the first published book. So it's when you're illustrating something like this, it's always good to kind of look at story. And like, I think the difference, I mean, concept art has storytelling in it as well. Obviously if you're doing storyboards, or you're doing an aspect of concept art where it's for film and it's heavily reliant on story, but when I'm designing and I'm drawing things, I it's most definitely always will, I suppose, just look at the story and make sure the story is right, and that's the problem with when a lot of people are doing this. They forget about story when they're creating illustration. They're like, oh, let's just make a cool Mad Hatter painting. Well, no, what's the story? The story will help you to kind of design and figure out what you want. And when I was designing this and drawing this version, I was like, hey, I want him to be mad as whatever, and I was drawing this and I was like, I want him to kind of be like, front on and maybe talking to people, or talking to the small version of Alice, and all kind of happy and cheery, and characters all around him. So I really wanted like a vibrant scene, because I think the Hatter is like, it's mad but he's funny at the same time, and he's just crazy and happy, and I mean, obviously has his sad elements to him, but I really wanted a vibe that was quite happy. So here I dumped in the drawing in. I picked that drawing, and I did actually pull out some of the elements of the other drawings and put it into this one. But what I did is I then like dragged it in and started. I put it in a Photoshop file and I put the divine proportion grid up, and then as you can see, I traced over the original drawing, and this is, this tracing allows you to refine any problems or fix up the design. As you can see, I'm tracing over and really making sure it looks a certain way before I go into painting, and that's important to do. Like if you're working on a design that's completely, if you don't have a reference and you're drawing something from scratch, like in this case the Hatter, you're not going to find, unless you get someone to cosplay, you're really not going to find someone that looks as crazy as this. It's a caricature, it's a characterized human. He's the Mad Hatter, he's human obviously, but it's not like, in the movie he's cast as being, Johnny Depp plays the Mad Hatter, but when you look at the animations, he's like a caricature, and when you're looking at caricatures of people, in real life people don't look like this, with these huge teeth and mouth. Maybe there are some people like this. I can think of one celebrity like with a big mouth like that. What is it, that girl that sings about big butts or whatever? But anyway, if I get into that, so as you can see, it's just like you see I've tracing over parts of it, but then I'm adding to it, or I'm like, well, okay, well the collar needs to go out to the further left, and the hair needs to be longer. And that's like when the power of, you can do this with traditional media. You can trace over your drawing and perfect the line work. But I really recommend this. If you're going to be drawing, you're doing a lot of, obviously I recommend drawing a lot of your designs. I sometimes just go straight to paint, and my painting is my form of drawing most of the time. But I do love drawing, and drawing is really important to kind of flesh out ideas. And I do a lot with dragons, because when you got, and like, I suppose anything that requires a lot of imagination, it's better to start off drawing. And I wouldn't even say imagination, but anything really, you should draw it all. I suppose at some topics I'm confident, so I just go straight to paint, and that's just how it is. So yeah, as you can see, I made the hat bigger, I changed the sign, I put a little, like a ribbon around the hat, the top hat, and I've even changed the bow so it looks more three-dimensional in space. So like, it's not cheating. Tracing over your drawing, you're not cheating. People go, oh, you're tracing, but this is a common technique used in Disney animation, and just in general in art, concept art, and a lot of professionals do this, where they trace over their drawing to perfect their drawing, before they go and create a finished illustration. So there, I'm whacking up the grid, and the reason why I whack up the grid is I'm trying to figure out, where do I place. This guy said this is a divine proportion grid, and I'm like, where do I place the Hatter so that he's got a focal point, or people look at him? And I ended up scaling it up bigger, and I stopped worrying about that divine proportion grid. Like, sometimes it's a good guide, but like if you're going to rely on that grid, or if you're always worried about that grid, you're never going to make great art. So like, I'm moving it over to the right and then to the left, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm kind of starting to realize, I'm kind of stuck. And so this is where I kind of went, I'm not really interested in worrying about the grid. It's more about, can I put him in the design and make him look good? So like, how big do I need to make him to fit that grid? And at the end of the day, I think with the final, I just dropped him down. I just said to myself, I'm just going to drop him down and go from there, and that was fine. And so as you can see, I start detailing all the clothes and stuff. I also want to take out time while obviously I've got this drawing playing, and this is all sped up. Really want to thank those who have downloaded at the $20 tier, and those on my Patreon, but also people that have downloaded this video if it's come out on Gumroad or any other platform. Really appreciate you looking at my work, and you can follow me. Just search my name, Anthony Christou, on DeviantArt. You can basically find me online. I'm all over the internet. I have Facebook, I have DeviantArt. I'm trying to I do kind of post regularly on Facebook, but being very busy, you know, I'm creating a comic. I'm creating a whole series of fairy tale and fantasy illustration. It's very hard for me to kind of get on Facebook a lot, and I am pulling away from a lot of social media. Like I post, but I'm not on there all the time. It kind of, like, I have to admit, it can get addictive, and it can be problematic because, you know, if you're on there a lot and you don't get your work done, that becomes a very big problem. And so as a professional, you know, I try and keep my time limited with social media. I usually am on social media a lot when I'm at a convention because I'm out of the studio. So when I'm away for a weekend or 3 or 4 days, traveling interstate or overseas, I'll have my Facebook and everything on, and I'll be chatting to people and stuff as much as I can if I'm not chatting to customers. So I'm quite socially active then. But anyway, so what I'm doing here is I'm just drawing. Like, it gets redrawn and reworked, you know, like I said, you're always playing. Once you get the drawing right, it makes the painting process a lot quicker. And the thing is like, I mean, it does change a lot. There were a lot of parts of this that changed in the drawing, but once you get the drawing finalized, you can then go to a final painting, and it becomes easier because you've got your design worked out. I just painted the Alice in Wonder, the actual Alice painting as well, and I fleshed out most of the design within the first day or two, and that was painted. I did some drawing, but that was mainly painted. But the advantage of, like, well, I basically, in the first, you know, drawing or the first painting of your design, you solve all the design problems there, as much as you can. And it's hard sometimes it is a creative thing where you're like, oh, things change or they evolve as you work. But if you can nail your design and make your design look awesome from the start of the painting, you know, I'm not talking about the details of the face, or I'm not talking about the details of, you know, the clothing or the texture. I'm talking about the general design. Make the general design look appealing. It makes it easier to paint the whole thing because you've got a design. And, like, I suppose if you look at this, it's sitting on the grid, it's sitting on the divine proportion area, and pretty much, you know, that's pretty much what I wanted to do, is kind of like holding the cup up. As you can see here, I've flipped over to a different drawing, and it's interesting because here I'm reworking. I still had the same drawing, but I changed the mouth and I reworked everything because I kind of wasn't happy with the mouth. It was a bit too exaggerated and crazy, and I wanted him to have a different facial expression. Also, I pull up other artists' work, like other great artists, not to copy them because this isn't a copy of someone else. I'm just looking at how they've attacked the Mad Hatter, and just to get ideas for lighting or even just for mood or the design, and like obviously the Alice painting on the left, the one on the right is like a steampunk design. The one on the left is like a messy kind of Mad Hatter, totally different to mine, you know. But it was just good to look at it for inspiration, like look at how did he approach the eyes, how did that person approach, you know, the teacup. In this case, the Hatter's holding the teacup. In mine, he's holding it up, similar to the design on the right rather than down. So here I'm just painting a table and looking at the placement as well. So a lot of fun here. But yeah, here I'm just still drawing, you know. I mean, this is a few hours in, I think, into the work, yeah. And this is why I'm kind of like, if you look at this, after this point, the design doesn't change of the actual Hatter himself, apart from scaling up a little bit or going down, because I was happy with that drawing. And I showed a few people, I was happy with that drawing of that hand, you know, and the design of the jacket and everything. It didn't change. You know, you look at the actual final painting, it doesn't change much at all. Also, sorry, like what I notice is sometimes my antivirus things pops up, so it's just the annoying thing with computers and recording videos. You know, you can't ever be completely void of distractions. I'm thinking of like having a computer that's got no internet and it just is used for recording DVDs, but then I need to install software in that one and all that sort of stuff, so that doesn't work. Just gets a bit too cumbersome. So yeah, apart from like later I add in like all the patchwork and all the cool stuff, like the, you know, all the rad design stuff, you know, what's in the handkerchief in his pocket, you know, the coffee cup. And also when I'm drawing here, I actually drew my hand, so that's actually my hand. It doesn't actually look like that, but I based the design of the Mad Hatter. I looked at my hand for reference. I actually held I was able to hold my left hand up and look at it while I was painting it because of the position of that hand in the painting, and also it was my left hand. I'm right-handed, mind you, most of the time. So, like, you know, I mean, normally you would just take a photo and draw that, but I just had it right there in front of me, so I was drawing my hand from life. And the actual advantage of doing that was, like, I could move it around, and I could actually see, you know, I could always get that position right, and I could move it around and play around with my own hand while I'm drawing it and get everything right, you know. And I sometimes, like, I really think real life is the best thing for drawing and painting. Simple as that, because you can actually capture the essence of things and exaggerate them better rather than an actual photo. So that's just, I suppose that's just my 2 cents. I mean, everyone's different. I'm all for using photo references in paintings to help your painting. You know, a lot of people shy away from that. As an artist, as long as you're not completely copying a piece of artwork, using references, nothing wrong with it. A lot of professional artists use it, and I've been talking to a lot of professionals about it, and they're like, you know, and I've been doing this for 5 years full-time, 4 to 5 years full-time, and most of my best work, I don't rely on reference, but I definitely references used in my painting to push the quality. So this is where I'm happy with the general design, you know, and I start just putting in a base color. It's not like anything finished or anything like that. It's not like final color here. This is just the start. So, and this is when I just play around with the idea of what color do I want to make things, you know, green, blues, purples, yellows. And when I was doing this, when I was painting this painting, I was like saying to myself, you know, he's mad, and at the end of the day, I was like, let's make him mad, you know. Like when I was doing the Cheshire Cat last month, it was like, okay, let's go for something creepy, you know. I was like, I'm going to go for something, you know, really, really scary, you know, kind of like a creepy Cheshire Cat, but friendly. Whereas this, I was like, when I was doing the colours, you know, I've got blue and all that, I really wanted him to be mad, you know, to look like he's a crazy mofo, you know, and that's, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And that's why I chose these colours. People if people want to say, hey, look, it's gaudy and whatever, but you actually look at the original drawings and the colorization on the right. He's got a yellow bow tie, red dots. He's got green jacket, a blue suit on, a brownish, reddish hat, and orangish hair. So I painted in some mushrooms as well in there, and got a teapot. I started bringing in a teapot as well, and later I do bring in Alice on the table and some cupcakes and stuff like that. So yeah, so here I'm just adding color, and it's just the first wash of color, you know, like. And what I do is I have a pencil layer, so I have one layer for pencils, and then I have one layer for the colorization underneath. And then what I eventually do, once I'm confident with that, like I like that color, like the color scheme, I then flatten that all together, and then paint directly in that layer. So what I'm doing right now is called direct painting. And what direct painting is basically I'm going straight to color. I'm not even going, I mean, there's nothing, I actually sometimes like going to grayscale first just to work out the lighting first before I paint. But, you know, in this case, I just said, right, screw it, I'm just going straight to color. I just want to look at what colors I can use, you know. And, yeah, that's basically, in a nutshell, that's what I did. So, and so yeah, I've gone in here and I've made sure that I have like I'm painting the lips and the nose and stuff like that, and I'm making sure that I've got everything sorted in terms of, you know, the design, and I'm just playing around with the color tones of the skin, and really I'm playing with the shadows in the face. Also, like when you're painting faces, like, or using reference, like when you use reference, say other paintings, or like say if I use people later to get the skin tones right and the lighting on the skin right, you know, or satisfactory to what I want it. But when you're painting something, like, look at actual examples of lighting, or look at other paintings that you like, you know, the moves of other paintings you like, or look at lighting and how it works, you know, and how it works on skin, because like it really helps to kind of determine what your painting's going to be like. It's not even that, it just gives you a good guide. And I'm not saying copy the exact color mode of another painting or whatever, but I'm saying at least like use it, you know, as I don't know what's the word, use it as inspiration. But you know, like you could use the color palette of another photo and then paint a picture, you know, like you could find a photo and you love the photo, you love the color, the mood of the photo or whatever of a certain time of day, and then you can be like, hey, I'm going to use that as a base for my next environment painting. And it's the same with people. If you're going to paint people, you go, I like this lighting on this skin, I like how the light hits this or whatever. We'll talk about that later a bit more. But here I'm just basically, it's still like, this is just the start, you know, it's not it's nowhere near completion. It's just basically blocking in. I call this stage the blocking in phase, you know, and that's what it is. It's called blocking in because I'm blocking in blocking in all the color, you know, all the values. And so I ended up putting a bit of background into it as well. Like I've got like trees and stuff. And, you know, as you can see, the design really does work now. Like before, I was worried about the grid, you know, that his face wasn't directly on the focal point of divine proportion. But in this case, it's like it worked out perfectly because we've got the table, you know, and he looks quite large. His scale is quite big compared to everything else in the scene. So that's the good thing about it. Sorry, so I'm just trying to like, and like I start putting texture in. Like I get like a textured brush. As you can see, there's a textured brush there, and I'm just putting in texture into it, like into the skin, into the clothes and all that. And sometimes just putting in a texture brush creates more information, so it adds more realism to what you're painting. So I admit, like, this is sped up, so maybe it took me like a couple of days to paint this. But these are like, and also I try and record as much of the painting process, and pretty much all the major painting processes are recorded, but sometimes getting certain details in, like noodling in texture, or painting in, like, you know, that teapot. I painted most of that teapot in, but when you don't have time to paint, like recording that for 5 hours, you know, it gets quite tiring. Not because you're recording it, but because software sometimes has problems and bugs and stuff, and so like you can record stuff, but you can also lose stuff. I've lost files a few times, and it's like, start again. So here I'm just painting in the ribbon, the color of the ribbon, the color of the hat, lighting. I'm also here. I start to kind of play around with lighting. It's kind of, it comes from above. I know the lighting comes. It's kind of like ambient. It's daytime. So when you're in daytime, everything's lit up. You know, you usually have your light source. You have your ambient light, which is the light. Ambient light is the light that bounces around. You have your direct light, so that's the sunlight coming in, and then you have ambient light. Ambient light is like the light which kind of bounces up. You know, it bounces up from the surface. So say if the sun comes down and hits, the sun comes down and hits a surface, right? So, you know, say if it hits you, and then it hits the ground, it's going to bounce up off the ground, or a reflective surface, and then it will hit you. That's an ambient light source. But you've got your direct light from the sun, so you might have your yellow sunlight coming and hit you, or blue light from the sun. Then it might hit the grass and bounce up off the grass. The light bounces up off the grass, and you might get a green tinge coming up on the shadow side of your body. So, like, I suppose daytime is something that takes a bit of time to master and get good at. And I'll be honest with you, like, I understand the concepts of daytime light, and I can paint it, and I paint it in environments, but with characters, it gets a bit more complicated because of the skin surfaces and stuff like that. So it's something you should really look into photos now. So here I painted like multicolored hair, and I'm started to do a color balance and saturation. I think I dropped the saturation here, and it was getting overly saturated. I didn't like it. It's amazing how far it goes from here. Like, this is just... Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I'm done now. And it's not done. It's because, like, you kind of get sick or tired of looking at the same thing after a while. But you kind of just got to push on. I wasn't thinking I was done, but it was just more like I was looking at this and I was like, I wasn't happy. I have to be honest with you all and say, I enjoyed the end result. I was really happy with. It wasn't my most favourite work, but I really did struggle with this, and it's got nothing to do with the lighting. I don't know. It's just something. I don't know. Maybe I think I just was losing inspiration on this. Like, I was kind of lacking inspiration. Whereas the Alice in Wonderland, the actual Alice painting, like that I did for June, that I'm working on now. I'm still working on it. I just was so inspired by it. I don't know, it was something to do with the photo. I actually shot reference. I went and shot references. So, like, sometimes, like, I want to talk about inspiration here because I think that really helps improve art. If you're really struggling for inspiration on art, sometimes, even if you're working on with a client, you could waste a whole day for a client trying to come up with ideas. But if you're not inspired, you really need to find a way to get inspired. And I struggle with this. No one's perfect, and the one way is going out and taking a photo. One could be looking at books to get ideas from what other artists have done. One could be, hey, I'm just going to go outside and go for a walk and, write down some ideas. But it could be you go see a movie that's related to it, or you look at a movie. And so, like, I don't know, maybe it was just the Mad Hatter. I like the Mad Hatter as a character. I think it's cool. I think even Johnny Depp did a good job in the movie, but I'm not inspired by him. It's not a character that I'm like, oh, wasn't that I didn't want to paint him? I did want to paint him. I like him, but it's not like a character. I think it's because it's such a trademark character. There's so many things in his design that are trademark. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was just a very challenging job. And so what I've done here is the usual flip the canvas routine, where I flip the canvas and I'm like, basically, I suppose moving it around and checking. I'm looking at the face and I'm like, I can see that something's off. I mean, like, his eyes aren't looking the right way. He's not doing the right thing, and it takes time to, I suppose. Like, when you flip the canvas, you see all the problems, and I really recommend when you're painting in Photoshop, flip your canvas all the time. You find, maybe I should tilt it a bit more, or maybe the hat's a bit off. You don't see your problems until you flip a canvas, and the problem is everyone can see those problems but you. So you need to flip the canvas. It is seriously like getting another pair of eyes. So I'm back to normal here now, and I'm just painting the hat, touching up the hat, the brim of the hat. And I'm just basically adding more and more information. I took away the teapot and the cups and stuff, and like I was just basically, because I wanted to focus on him and get the face right. I didn't want to be bugged by what was on the table. Sometimes I have a really weird way of working, not in a bad way. It's just, I don't know. So yeah, I'm just adding in the patches, the shadows, all that cool stuff. Lots of fun. So I'm going in and just working out things. So here I've just added more shadow, and I flip back to the other way just to see what the problem is. So like here I'm looking and I'm painting in the lighting. So I'm like I'm actually painting. I made it initially. I was like, I make the lighting go from the top left. You know what I mean? Or when it's flipped back to the normal side, make the lighting go on the top right. and that was incredibly important to kind of get the lighting right, because now that the lighting's right, I'm able to, you know, I don't know, I'm just kind of, I think when, you know, once you get your lighting right, you can then render everything. It's really important, and I did that with the soft light layer. You know, I've got there's a lighting layer up there you can see in Photoshop, and that's just a soft light layer. And that way you can kind of just work out, okay, what's right, what's wrong. Like I said, I was not feeling this painting. Like, it wasn't until the last day when I got everything right and I pushed it, and I actually spent another half a day really working on lighting. I know, it was just a challenge for me, and I just want people to know that, like, even like someone like me who's had 5 years experience as an illustrator, concept artist, and I've worked as a designer, graphic designer. I've worked in fine art as well. I've been a fine artist for many more years than that. Now, while I was a graphic designer for 8 years, at least 4 of those I was doing commissions for people, paintings and that, you know, for galleries and selling them. And like, I've been, so I don't know, you could say professionally I've been doing this for 5 years, but I still struggled with this. And it was a big battle. It was like, I was just fighting to get this right. And it wasn't anything like wrong with this painting. Like, it wasn't anything wrong with the design. It wasn't anything wrong with the drawing. It wasn't anything wrong with any of it, apart from the mood and the lighting. It was the lighting and the mood that needed to be reworked. You know, I needed to rework the shadows at the end. I needed to rework the direction of the light, the ambient light, the, you know, the date, the time of the day. And so, you know, as you can see here, I'm just adding details to the whole thing, and I'm trying to talk as fast as I paint, but it's not going to work. So I'm just talking about what I've done here, so that way you all know. So as we can see, it's just a process of painting all of this, getting through all the shadows, and, you know, adding, obviously I added an environment. I painted in the background. The background was quite light, so I wanted to darken it up. Wasn't not darken it up, I just wanted to add more saturation in it. So, and, you know, I painted extra trees. Ended up putting the Cheshire Cat in there as well from my other painting. I just cropped out his head, you know, simply because I wanted it something like funny, you know, have the cat in the background making comments, you know. So yeah, so it's just a matter of going in and adding the shadows. So I'm sorry I'm pausing, because I'm just trying to explain what I'm thinking, what I'm doing. Here I'm just adding more saturation. I'm going through adding the shadows more. It needs more shadows, and you can see I've switched on and off the lighting layer. So on and off with the soft light layer, and that's how we roll. On and off with the soft light layer. Yeah, so it's a lot of work at this point, you know, getting things right and going from there. So, and yeah, so here I'm like, to get the skin right, I just kind of added more shadows, you know, and I've gotten like a finer brush, and I fixed up the hair as well, and I've gone in and like, I've used like a textured brush, like a dotted texture brush, and I've kind of, I suppose, added in more detailed information there as well. So I've kind of, you know, add skin blemishes and stuff like that, and it's really important to do that sort of stuff, because that's what is on skin. You know, you never have, skin is never soft, you know, just this flat thing. Usually there's dots and stuff in the skin, especially this guy, he's old, you know. So here I'm adding, you know, a whole pile of shadows and stuff like that, and you know, under the eyes. This is where, this stage, you know, I can't really tell you how to do it. All I can say, this is where you add the detail stage. This is where you add, you know, all the information. You know, this is where you're painting everything. You're painting shadows, you're painting information, you know, you're painting lighting. And like, as you can see, I've got all the lighting, the shadows, and it does get a bit too dark. But yeah, I'm basically adding in more hair, and it's multicolored hair and stuff. And the thing with it, it's like, you know, it's just at this stage, like the whole design's done, everything's done, but now it's like rendering everything. You know, it's really important to remember that. You know, like people think, oh, if you paint in Photoshop, oh, you know, it's all easy. But I had to render everything here. You know, I had to go in and work out every shadow, paint every shadow. I had to work out the hair. You know what I mean, and get that right. And it's just time, you know, like people think, oh, it's just going to magically happen. No, you have to sit there and go, I'm going to go in and paint that ear or that piece of hair, or, you know, I'm going to go and paint in the details in that, you know, in whatever, in the nose, or, you know, stuff like that. So, I'm sorry if you can hear sounds, it's just me with my mouse and stuff, so I'm just making sure things are recording at the moment. And yeah, so yeah, as you can see, we've got more information. The hair's many colors, it does change, the lighting does change on this a lot. It moves around. Yeah, so it's just really, this is the noodling phase. You know, I can't, all I can say is here I've added some texture brushes. All I'm using is the smudge tool, the mixer brush tool, and in the mixer brush tool you can see like there is a whole bunch of I suppose, like there's a whole bunch of settings where you can mix and blend the paint digitally. So I recommend, like, I'm gonna, in my future DVDs, tutorials, for those of you that get this one or get whatever, those of you that are subscribed to the Patreon, I'll have like things on painting techniques in Photoshop and stuff like that. You know, using the mixer brush tool, using the smudge tool, using, you know, painting techniques digitally to help you get your work done. So what am I doing here? Okay, I'm adding more details to that teapot. God, that teapot's got more information than the rest of the hatter, and I wasn't happy with that, so I cut it back. So I apologise, I'm drinking coffee while I you know. So as you can see here, I'm just zooming in on the eye, adding in the highlights, adding in the shadow part of the eye. You know, like here I was looking at photo references of eyes, I had them on the side, and I was like looking at, you know, how would an eye be shaped? You know, how will it work? You know, and like here, like you really need, the most important thing in designing characters is the face. Like the first thing people look at is the face. You know, like here it's looking all mad and stuff. Oh, here we go, here's the Alice. I start painting Alice, the small Alice, because at that point she's very small in the story. And I was talking about story before, and it's really important that when you're designing painting, always think of story. And that's why I had that table there. I could have done the full body Mad Hatter, but I'm like, there's no story, it's kind of just concept art, you know. But the story here is he's at the dinner, at the table, he's looking a bit crazy eyed at Alice, thinking, oh, what am I going to do with her? and she's kind of got her hands on the side, you know, kind of angry, like, you know, fix me up, you know, turn me back to normal kind of thing. Give me some mushroom to go bigger. And so, like, you know, I'm painting Alice, and like, the whole idea is it's the tea party, you know, it's the story of the tea party. So you've got Alice in there, you've got all that cool stuff like the cat in the background, and the only thing that's conflicting here in the designer, and I didn't see it till later, but it was that the teapot, the smoke is really in the wrong place. It's kind of like it was just kind of clashing with the top, so I needed to kind of flip it around. But anyway, so there you go. I just painted an Alice from behind, so I put her in there and just did some stuff to make it look cool, you know. So just added in some cool things. So I apologise, that's my phone making that beep sound. You know, so here I'm just like adding sharpness to her and adding like lighting and just shadows, so that way she looks realistic. Well, not realistic, believable that she's actually in the scene. I whack up the divine proportion grid, and I'm just making sure that everything's sitting in relation to everything. And obviously I realised with that curve of the grid, I want to have Alice kind of sitting on the left there, you know, so that way she's intersecting in that main story, that arc, so that way it kind of goes up. And that's when I realised the teapot's too close and I need to move that out of the way. So there's a way you realise something when it's later. Yeah, I mean, look, at this point I'm like pretty happy with the whole design. Like I think it's pretty right at this point. Like, it's not fantastic, but I'm like, yeah, I'm starting to see it come to life. You know, we've got the shadows in around the actual character. You know, we've got bring up some Alice references. Yeah, so here I'm like bringing up Alice references as well. So it's good to have like as much references as you can. You know, like a lot of people don't. Like I said, a lot of people are like against references and stuff like that. If you know, like you can see here, I'm just looking at Alice and trying to get her dress right. That's it. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to do anything dodgy and copy that, but I'm like trying to make sure that I've captured Alice well. You know, just the dress and her poses and stuff like that, and the hair, the length of the hair, stuff like that. The hair is quite long. You know, like if you look at this, it's very long. And when I paint Alice in the actual Alice painting, the final painting of Alice, I make it longer, you know, I make sure it goes past the shoulders. You know, that's really important with Alice. Like I said, I'm trying to stick to the original thing. And yeah. So yeah, it's just, here I'm just rendering the crap out of Alice. You know, I'm just making sure that, you know, we've got enough information in Alice. We've got the feet right, we've got the legs right, we've got the shadows here. And this was, like I said, it's all done from imagination. Okay, I'm looking at the fun on drawing of Alice, so I've got their design right, but I ain't even, you know, using any major photographic reference to paint this. You know, you don't need to. So I'd say it's not, like I said, there's nothing wrong with using reference, you know, but start off with your imagination, draw with your imagination, and paint afterwards. So this is the stuff. This is the shizzle dizzle. Can't believe I'm saying these funny terms. Should be a comedian. So just still adding shadows to Alice, you know, to the dress and stuff. So I'm basically looking at that dress that's in the actual drawing in the top left, and I'm like, oh, she's got like a lot of pleats, and you know, it would kind of crease in there, and the hair would go down to almost to her hips. You know, I've actually made it longer. I've made it down to her hips. You know, I like the idea of making the hair long. Like she's a pretty young English girl, you know, with really long hair. So here I'm gonna openly admit I dumped the photo in. Okay, I dumped the photo in. I dropped down the opacity and I painted it into the thing. I removed the excess photo and I clipped it in because I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna sit there and paint a checkered pattern. You know, this is where sometimes digital painting, using a photo for a texture, there's nothing wrong with it. You know, but what I did is I dropped the opacity back. I painted on top of that. As you can see, I blended it in. I did some cool stuff with it, you know. And you know, as you can see, I painted on top of that and reworked it. And you can see it's not the photo anymore. Like it basically becomes looks like a painted. Like I put, you know, like messy cake marks on him and icing and sugar and all that sort of crap on him and you know, that's the whole idea, is like you got to sit there and change, like you dump a photo in but then change it, you know, like paint on top of that photo, add things to it, and it's not like I've added a whole photo, that's the whole thing, you know. It's where I get angry and people are like, oh, you use a photo, you know, or you kit bashed or whatever. Like, well, I painted the whole thing, but I've added photo texture. There's nothing wrong with that. Even if you want to kit bash and use photo manipulation, but paint on top of that and paint the whole thing afterwards, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're just dumping a photo in, as long as it's your own, there's nothing wrong with that as well. You know. But anyway, I'm just like, I don't know. I'm playing around with the layers here. I'm switching it on and off, doing something. I'm trying to figure out what looks better or what doesn't look better. As you can see, you like when you paint on top of that shirt, you don't even notice it's a photo anymore. You paint over that, you blend it. Like I use a mixer brush to make it look like it's, you know, got paint strokes. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's, you know, it's just like, I remember watching a video from Jason Chan, great artist from Magic the Gathering, and he's done a lot of stuff. He's a fantasy illustrator, and he, like, that's where he first said, like, he grabbed like a pattern brush, and he didn't have time to paint the whole chain of this around this monster, all these tentacles. So he had a brush that he made that looked like tentacles, and he just painted, bang, 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 painted it in with that special brush, like a stamp. He stamped it in. And the thing is, even if you're doing traditional painting, like a lot of the traditional artists would use things as stamps. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but what you say, what am I talking about? Well, let's say I was painting landscape. Some of them would like create a stamp of a tree and use that as a brush, you know, or they'd use special kind of custom brushes that they make themselves, you know, with acrylic paint, with actual, you know, tools and utensils. And so, you know, at the end of the day with design, it's the end result that matters, and illustration, it's the end result. So here I'm like selecting the whole character and cool shit's happening here. I'm like playing around. Like this is the bit where I'm like adding more information, adding more, I suppose, data into the whole thing, you know. I'm going, alright, let's add some more info. Let's add some, yeah, you know, it's just a matter of adding more lighting and stuff like that. So, well, it's not lighting. It's like I'm looking at the eyes and I'm like, how can I make those eyes pop out more realistic? It's got to have highlights. It's got to have reflections in those eyes. And you can zoom in and really do it. And I suppose the facial expression of his eyes is he's mad. You know, so he's like kind of like got this weird, crazy face about him. He's like, hey, I'm crazy, kind of thing. You know, and that's the sort of expression that I really wanted to capture with him. You know, I wanted him to look crazy. You know. No if buts about it. So crazy is good. you know. So yeah, here I've just gone in, and the advanced lighting, I basically have soft light, I have a shadow layer, I have a sunlight layer, which is an overlay. So basically I have an overlay layer, I have a soft light layer, and I have a shadows layer. And I just repaint the lighting. Basically, I add more light, add more where the light is coming in from the top left, like in the painting on the left, I make sure the light is coming from the top left, the shadows are in the bottom right, and make sure it still pops, and make the, like, I want to go for like a warm, happy day. It's a happy, crazy day, you know. And like people, like some people saw it and they're like, yeah, I love it. Some people didn't like it, this painting, and the reason why is because people are used to people do prefer creepy, dark kind of paintings, and that's just how a lot of people are wired. And some people are used to seeing me paint dark things, you know, moody, dark things. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of over it. Like I still like it, but I'm getting to the point in my career where I want to paint in any lighting scenario, and I just enjoy painting anything really. Or I like a new challenge, you know, even though this painting was a big challenge for me. And it wasn't the lighting because it was shot in day. I think it's just a combination of things. I do paint characters, but this was like pretty much, I was reimagining the Mad Hatter, you know. It was a struggle because I'm like trying to repicture, trying to redesign something, but I don't have any references apart from what's been made in the past. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, so basically that's what it was all about. So like, you know, half the battle was, okay, what is this Mad Hatter going to look like? And then the second battle was like, wow, how can I make this look more interesting? How can I make this look more dramatic? But honestly, all in all, I wouldn't say it's, I don't know, like, I would say it's a good painting. You know, it's a solid painting. It's not like my best work, but it's good work in my view. You know, at this point in time, you know, there's obviously going to be stuff that's better. You know, because all artists improve. You know, we all improve. But yeah, basically, I copied the lighting scheme of the painting on the left. I'm like, that's how we're going to make him pop. We're going to have, you know, lighting coming from the top left with like yellowish kind of tinge, whitish yellow tinge, and we're going to put more rim light on things, and you can see the hair's like really, really not blown out of proportion, but it's very, very bright, you know, and it's fun. Which is cool. So I hope you don't mind, like I've actually put like a sample video, so like this video goes for like 3 hours and I'm talking and I'm teaching people, but I put up a sample process video which is only like 30 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes, but it's free stuff, but it's not me actually talking, it's just I suppose, what is it, it's me painting, but the first stages of the painting. So yeah, here it's just like, you know, I started adding shadows, and it wasn't even shadows because the shadows aren't dark shadows. Remember, the shadows that you paint, they are, you know, ambient light shadows. You know, the shadow is ambient light and it's a different color usually. So that's how it rolls. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy, and I'm just fixing up the lighting with everything, like the Cheshire Cat, just a few things like the environment as well. And I'm quite content with that. I think I do a final colour balance at the end as well. Let's see if it comes up with that in a minute. So, as I say, I multitask, and right now I'm clicking around with my mouse because I'm doing some other stuff. Just clicking through some reference images. The artist's job is never done. Yeah, so, like I said, like, you know, it was quite good to a point, but then it's like, then like you can experiment, and if you want to add more dramatic lighting and things, you do this, you know, like, which is what I've done. I've looked at another artist's work, and I'm like, what can I do to make it more dramatic? And I really like that piece of art. Like, I didn't like it at this level, thinking, it's boring, but it's like, you can do so much with art, you know, there's a lot of great art out there. So here I'm just selecting the character and just adding more lighting. Yeah, so I'm pretty happy. At this point I'm pretty happy with the whole piece because the lighting starts to come together. It pops, it's got dramatic lighting. It's more fun, you know. Is that such a thing, more fun? But anyway, yeah, it's just, you know, at this stage, this is just the last stage where, like, all the details are done on the painting. There's no more details to be done, and it's just the stage where I'm adding the cool lighting, you know, making it look better. And there really isn't much more to say. Like, you know, I play around. You know, you can play around with the lighting, the shadows and stuff by putting them in different modes like soft light, dark, and multiply, color, luminosity. And you can play around and go, what works for shadows, you know, on this. And like, you can paint in shadows and then pull them out. If you don't like them, you pull them out. You know. Yeah, it's all good. So I'm quite happy with this. So the whole thing is like 2 hours, so we're getting there. So I don't know, like, if you watch my videos and you're subscribed to my Patreon, the other thing I'm doing is I'm offering advice to people. So if there's like something you want to know, question you want to ask me, I'm happy for people to ask me questions. I'll do my best to answer them on the forum. Like, if it's not too personal, like, you know, what colour undies do you wear, I'm not going to answer stuff like that. But like things like, you know, how do you paint this, how do you capture atmosphere, I'll include it in my next video, or I will answer things on the forum, and I'll say, like, you know, hey, I'll include this in my next video. And this is what it's about. It's about creating the community where I'm giving back, you know, to everyone, advice, tips, professional advice on how to be a professional illustrator and stuff like that, and how I've faced challenges with paintings. So as you can see here, basically all I'm doing at the end is I've got those different lighting modes. I'm playing around with levels. I pulled out the blacks. The last one was pulling out of the blacks. I did a color balance on at the end, and we're pretty much there. So basically I've done a color balance, a levels adjustment, and I've added a whole bunch of lighting layers to make it look like the lighting's coming from the left. I actually also sampled from that painting to make sure I captured that, you know, that skin tone right. Yeah, so you have a look here. I actually put both paintings in grayscale mode to see, hey, is it doing the same kind of thing, you know? Some people, you know, you're gonna laugh, some people actually convert the whole painting to grayscale right there and they do another color version. I didn't want to do that with this. I was so tempted to. I was like, let's try this, but I'm like, you know, don't really have time, you know. And I was happy with it. It wasn't like I was dissatisfied with it. Here I'm actually like fixing up the hair. I pulled out the lighting in the hair so that way the colors of the hair still stand out. So yeah, don't have much time left, but thank you so much. And yeah, I appreciate you looking at the videos, and yeah, you got the big thank you message at the end, so please spread the word. And yeah, I'm just going to talk a bit more and just say I really appreciate those who have been on my Patreon, whether you know, the people that have supported it so far, and also those who are who've got this video at some other way, either through Patreon or through Gumroad or whatever. Thanks a lot. It really means a lot. You know, having more people support what I do is great, and the more support I get, the more I can actually make these videos and things. Yeah, so without further ado, last note, I've already said before, but if you've got any questions in the forums, please send me a question. If you've got any questions, I will answer them for you, and we'll go from there. Like, if there's anything you ever need a hand with, just send me a message, and I'll at least try and include it in the next video, you know, or at least answer on the forum. So, but thanks again. I hope that was helpful, and keep on painting. Catch ya.